compare and despair. Those two words can often go together really well. Because when we compare ourselves to other people, it can become something very despairing. It can become something that takes over, that dictates how we live our lives, how we dress, how we eat, how we work out. So many parts of our lives can be under the microscope of comparing and despairing. And this is Pride Month, and one of the topics I wanted to cover was body comparison. But I also want to talk about spiritual comparison. Now, comparison, I believe, is normal. It's normal. We're human beings. We look at other people and we compare ourselves to them and we want what they have. These are normal desires and feelings. Putting yourself down is not normal. Comparison can inspire us to aspire, to have goals, because we see someone else having something. We want the same thing. We want to aspire to that. That's normal. But the fact that we don't have that thing yet, that person has, says nothing about our self-worth, says nothing about your self-worth and how worthy you are in this moment. We will cover spiritual comparison as well as physical or body comparison in this episode, especially for many of us who will be in our swimsuits this summer or who will be at Pride festivals. But this is for everybody, because we all go through comparison one way or the other. Let's talk first about spiritual comparison. I want to start by saying that enlightenment is not a competition. It's a choose your own adventure kind of experience. So often we think about people who've been gurus for 20, 30 years, 40 years, people who've done mediumship for 10 years, people who've been doing psychic readings forever as the experts, as the people to look up to. And many of them are. With experience comes wisdom. With experience comes expertise. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean we should put ourselves down. And it's the reason that when I've come across psychic mediums who paint themselves as a guru or as your salvation, as the only way you'll get help, that's them putting me down, putting us down. I've talked before about a psychic medium I used to follow and I had a reading with that I decided to unfollow and detach myself from because they started spouting these conspiracy theories that didn't align with my values. And when they noticed that I did that, they made it a point to go public with saying that this person, aka me, that this person betrayed them. That they had been Judased. Very extreme way to react, but that's how they felt. And that just goes to show you that psychic medium saw themselves on this high pedestal and me as on a lower pedestal, and sees their other followers on Instagram as being lower and them being the expert. But the sign of a really good teacher, and I think a really good psychic medium, is someone who wants to uplift their clients, uplift the people they work with, so that they're all experiencing the same level of spiritual beauty, of wonder, of enlightenment. Not to keep someone down so you can keep teaching them and making them feel like there's always something they're missing that you give to them. So enlightenment, like I said, is not a competition. It's not a competition. It's choose your own adventure. And people who are years into their spiritual belief system can sometimes be people who aren't developing as human beings because they're using spirituality as a way to bypass their human problems. I've met some psychic mediums who've been doing their work for at least a decade. And listen, no one's perfect. I have my own mental health issues. I'm very open about them. I see a therapist. I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I have my issues. But I at least know how to treat people with respect. And there are people who've been doing this work for a long time who don't know what respect even means, but they expect it in return, or they expect it coming their way. So just because someone has been doing this work for 10 years doesn't make them a perfect human being. We all have flaws, and some people are not aware of their own flaws, which makes it even more challenging to interact with them. So don't compare yourself to people who've been doing work for so long, who've been psychic mediums for so long, who've been in a spiritual practice for over 2 decades. Don't compare yourself. Instead, see what they have in their lives that you want and see how you can create that for yourself. Aspire to something instead of just comparing. But also pay attention to how they live out their truth, how they live out their spiritual belief system. Do they actually walk the talk? And if they don't walk the talk, there's absolutely nothing to compare yourself to there. Now, comparing mediumship and psychic abilities can also come up as you develop your spiritual practice, as you explore your psychic abilities. It's very easy to be in a practice circle, for instance, and think, oh man, John has amazing abilities. I'm never going to be like that. It's easy to slip into that way of thinking, but it's not helpful. And once you acknowledge that there's always going to be somebody who does something better than you do and someone who does it worse than you do, until you acknowledge that, you're never going to be at this place of acceptance and peace. This place of accepting your own abilities for what they are, beautiful. Even if they're not looking the same way that psychic practices their abilities. It's not about being a better medium, better psychic. Actually, the only thing that I think makes someone a better psychic or medium is someone who is empathetic. And a lot of people like to claim that they're empaths in psychic and mediumship world, but they don't act like they're empaths. They use that as an excuse for their inappropriate behavior and demeaning behavior. True empathetic psychic mediums do not try to make you feel worse than they do. Do not try to put you down and themselves up on a pedestal. And so, where was I going with that? As you're comparing your abilities to other people's abilities, just know that the only measurement of good psychic abilities, of good mediumship abilities, is the ability to listen to spirit, but also to your client or the person you're reading for, and the ability to take responsibility where you should. And that means taking responsibility when you make a mistake, and also taking responsibility when something wonderful happens in a reading. It's not only you doing the reading. Spirit is working in this reading that you're trying to do with somebody. So you can't take all the credit for it. Humility is important. If you're going to compare yourself in any way to another psychic or medium, look at those qualities, humility and empathy. Otherwise, or outside of that, there's no reason to compare your abilities to other people's abilities, because your abilities may be a different language, so to speak. It may be a different modality of energy work or healing work. It may just be you get information differently, and that's okay. That is okay. Not every person has to have a reading where the client goes, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Not every reading has to be that. It's nice when it is, but it doesn't have to be powerful, impactful. As you explore being part of a spiritual community, comparing and despairing may come up. It will likely come up. Now, spiritual communities are important for relatedness. You're with people who think like you or think similarly to you. That's what community is for. And I think spiritual communities should be there to lift you up, not to make you feel excluded, not to make you feel like you're less than they are. Spiritual communities are not for comparison. They're for inspiration. And it's one of the reasons that in my coaching, my spiritual coaching work, I'm working with clients on finding their spiritual community, but also having a sense of self-identity, because you don't want to lose yourself in community where you're no longer recognizing your own needs or your own wants or desires. You still want to have your own individuality even within community, right? So as you step into a spiritual community and you feel the need to compare yourself to other people, ask yourself, am I comparing myself to other people because I want to have or want to experience the things that they do? I want to have the things that they have? Or am I comparing myself because I don't think I'm good enough and this will make me feel good enough? Two very different intentions, two very different energies. So remember, enlightenment is not a competition. The person who has no belief in God or a higher power is just as worthy as someone who does. An atheist is just as worthy of a beautiful life as someone like you and me talking about spiritual woo-woo stuff. The atheist is not less than we are. Everyone is equal. It's up to us to recognize our equality and how much we are all part of one big family and one big energy. It's up to us to recognize that. And therefore, there's no reason to compare ourselves and then despair. If you want to compare ourselves, use it to fuel your aspirations, to fuel your goals, not to fuel your self-denigration and self-pity. You don't deserve that. So now on to body comparison and physical comparison. I was originally going to make this episode all about this, related to pride and how pride events may make body image issues worse. But then I wanted to also talk about the spiritual comparison, and I also wanted to not make it seem like pride festivals are the reason many people feel like they have a low self-esteem regarding their bodies. Because once we put all the blame on something outside of us, then it takes away any responsibility we have for ourselves and for improving ourselves. But let's start with this. Your body's form or structure doesn't define your self-worth, period. There are people who will want to define your self-worth based on your body. It will happen. It probably has happened. We have all gone through it. We've been made fun of for the way we look, most of us. There are people who will define your self-worth, your worth based on your body. But that's only because that's the way they define themselves. People who want to use a measuring stick that's so focused on the human body, so focused on how it looks, are also doing the same with themselves. It's the only reason they do it for other people. The only reason they do it to other people is because they're doing it to themselves. And in my coaching work with clients on body image, I really want to help people separate other people's beliefs about themselves from their own beliefs about themselves. What other people think of you versus what you think of you. Because what other people think of you can be important. It's good to get feedback from other people. You want to know when you're acting rude. You want a friend to tell you when you're doing something out of turn or inappropriate so you can correct it, improve yourself, right? But when people think of you as being less than because you don't have a certain type of body part, we can separate how we see ourselves from that kind of energy. Because that kind of energy only comes from people who define themselves that way, who are just as strict with themselves and their own bodies. As I'm saying this to you, I'm thinking about myself and just how hard this is to recognize. I've gone through some work on trying to love myself more, but it still can be very hard because it comes back. It doesn't ever leave me. I can see someone at a pride parade who looks really, really good, and my mind goes straight to, oh, I don't look that way. I need to go home. Honest to God truth. I have felt that way before. And it's hard. It's really difficult, but I have to fight that urge to want to leave and go home. But it takes that one person I see who looks really good in a Speedo at a pride festival, and I'm totally shutting down. Now, is that person's fault? Is it the pride festival's fault? No. Now, we can give some responsibility to the culture for some beauty standards. Sure, we could. Yes, I can see that being a conversation here. But for the most part, why am I letting that bother me? There's a reason I'm letting that visual of that person trigger me and bother me. So what can I do to not be as triggered by that person? Because that person's just living their life on a pride parade float in a Speedo. It has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. So at pride festivals, there are many naked or half naked people. And I want to acknowledge that there is in mainstream gay culture, there is a gay male beauty standard, just like how there is a female beauty standard. And if you like the look of that standard, that's okay. If you want to look like that standard, that's okay. No judgment here. But if you let it define your worth, that can be a pretty miserable way to live. I'll say it again. You can like the beauty standard. You can be attracted to it. You could want to be it. That's fine. If you let it define your self-worth, that's dangerous territory. There have been many times when I felt so small in front of other people whom I thought looked really good, who were very good looking, looked like models at a bar, at a party, and I just felt so small. I wanted to curl up. It sounds crazy when I say it out loud, but it's how I used to deal. I remember the first time I stepped into a proper gym with gym equipment, etc. I was on my university campus, and I was waiting outside of a yoga studio at the gym for a yoga class, and there were people around me on machines working out. There were many college boys just like me, but they were on weighted machines, and I was looking at them and their bodies, and I was experiencing my own body at the moment, and I felt like, oh my god, I feel so ugly. I need to leave. I don't belong here. I wanted so badly to leave. Ended up being there was no yoga class, I think. I was there for the wrong night. But I felt so small. I still remember viscerally how I felt in that moment. Now, does that mean that Bob on the weighted plate machine, on the cable fly machine, is to blame for how I feel? No, Bob is just living his life lifting cable weights. I needed to change something about my mindset that day. I had the work to do. And I think this brings up the question of, where do we, or to what extent do we allow the beauty industry or the fitness industry to tell us what is beautiful, what is pretty, what is hot? And I think there is some nuance here because, look, I like a guy who works out. I like a guy who looks like he works out. I like a guy who grooms themselves a certain way, who takes care of their body in a certain way. That doesn't make me bad or makes my taste bad. And I don't believe that I'm contributing to a cultural issue. Maybe I'll change my mind about that, but I don't believe I am. I just like what I like. But I'm never, ever, I've said this to many of my friends, I would never date a hot guy who's an asshole. Ever. Ever. I have a limit to how much I can like someone like that. There's so many people who are so caught up in their appearance that they just base their whole personality, their whole self-worth on that, and it shows through their attitude, through the way they connect with people. Now you can find people like that in all kinds of shapes and sizes, not just pretty, quote-unquote pretty people as we define pretty in this culture. But it just goes to show that it's an inside job. They could be as pretty as can be, but if they're not happy with themselves and all they do is define themselves based on their outer appearance, I wouldn't want to live in their head. And I hope they get the help that they need. I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole and going on a tangent after tangent after tangent. But I'm thinking back to that gym experience and how much I just felt resentful of those guys. I felt less than those guys. And now looking back, I think, dude, that was all on you. You were thinking these things yourself. You were not being approached by any of them, being made to feel like you're less than. You're thinking of these things yourself. And this is where the self-love work happens. This is when it's very important to remind ourselves that if you want to look a certain way, create some goals to look that way, and healthy goals, right? But if you are trying to look that way because you feel that right now you are not worthy of love and happiness, I think we're going about it the wrong way then. That's something I'm always working on. That's always something that I'm always trying to remind myself of, that I'm working out because I enjoy it, because I like the result. Not to keep a man, not to get a man. The only man I'm trying to keep sane and trying to keep close to me is myself. And I like the way I look in a mirror when I've done some consistent working out and eating well. I like the look. I like the feeling. It makes me happy. And everyone deserves that feeling regardless of what size or shape they are. So to put a bow on this, comparison is normal. Putting yourself down is not okay. If you're going to compare yourself, use it to drive some inspiration or aspirations, some goals you have, not to define your self-worth in a negative fashion. Don't use comparison to define yourself negatively. Use comparison to drive yourself in some goals you're excited to have. You have to be excited about these goals you have. Not do it just to fit in. Not do it just to appear like you are in the mix with those kinds of people. I'm giving myself a lot to think about. So if you are attending a pride parade, just know that that person on that float that looks really cute says nothing about you. If you're at work and someone dresses with Louboutins, and you look at their shoes and wish you had them, okay, maybe start saving some money to get those Louboutins. But don't compare yourself to them in a way that makes you feel like you're less than they are. Like you're less successful than they are. Because at the same time, we don't know at all what's hiding behind people's foreheads. That person with the Louboutins, maybe they're just going through a divorce right now. Maybe they lost somebody they love very dearly. That guy on that parade float, maybe he has an addiction issue. Maybe he just lost his job. Maybe he just went through a breakup. I'm making up all these scenarios not to be dramatic, but just to tell you that we really don't know what's happening behind people's two eyes, regardless of their appearance on the outside. So comparing ourselves to the point of despair, it's not worth our time. It's not worth our time. I hope this leaves you feeling a little inspired. Inspired to not compare yourself the way you have been. Inspired to create goals for yourself that feel healthy for you. And I hope it inspires you to be proud of how far you've come on your journey. You're here. You're breathing. You're present. You're making it. And you're going to make it. Take care, my loves, and I'll see you on the next episode. This podcast is really about helping you trust your own intuition and step into your power. If you'd like to work with me directly, you can learn more at juanfrancisco.co. That's juanfrancisco.co. And please remember to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend.